Morning, America. This is Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli from offgridmontana.com. And we are going to discuss a few things today. We have two guests, one regular guest. I'll introduce them both in a moment. You know, we spend a lot of time, especially in the new media, talking about certain scares and bad news and things like that, and well-deserved. But we also have to balance it out with ideas and solutions. So what we're going to try and do, and what we try to do here on USAPrepares.com, is talk about ideas and solutions. And I'm going to introduce our regular guest. I know most of you who listen to this show are very familiar with Rick Miller. And I want to introduce Dr. Richard Allen Miller to the show. Welcome, Rick.
Good morning. The second one, is that Thrice? He said yes?
I'm going to introduce him immediately after you say hi.
Yes. Yeah, no, go take care of it, please.
Oh, okay. All right. Well,
everybody knoes me. I don't give a damn about me.
Okay, Rick.
Young turd.
No, that's fine. I'll get back to you. That's fine. Okay. Who I'm going to introduce next is a young man. He's a millennial. The M word. But he's actually a millennial doing something about it. He's not stuck on the fact that everything is going to crash and burn, and if they do, he's got a plan B. Well, what we need is people who have ideas and solutions that's outside the box. And this young man, his name is Thrice Seita, and I'm probably butchering his name, but for those of you who aren't driving and aren't listening to AM or FM, his website is N as in November, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, .life. Thrice, welcome to USAPrepares.com. How are you this morning?
I'm kind of still waiting for this amazing millennial you're talking about, but I'm doing good. Thank you very much for that intro. I'm very appreciative of being able to be on here and share what we're trying to do.
Yeah. Well, I had a nice lengthy conversation with you yesterday, and just so you know, listeners, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, or Rick Miller, he recommended me to contact Thrice, and as soon as I got off the phone with him, Thrice called. And I'm looking at his website right now, and there's sections on free-range poultry, on fresh vegetables, on classes and internships, poultry sales, class on chicken compost feed method, class on wild edibles, which I can certainly teach here in Montana, and I do, class on wildcraft and commercial mushrooms. So you're basically getting back to nature. And Thrice, we had this conversation yesterday, and when we talked about the imbalances of life, and you remember me talking about the millennials, of course I was doing this tongue-in-cheek, have a very poor balance between nature and technology. And you're trying to break that mold. Tell the American people what you're doing with your website and your goals.
All right. I mean, really, it's fairly simple. It's kind of utilizing things that already exist, but combining them together. And two of the big things, like you're saying, is kind of the whole concept of being with nature, wildcrafting, as well as farming, you know, the more sustainable side of agriculture, mixed with our advancing technology. So for millennials, unfortunately, we're constantly bombarded by all this click-through technology, so we have a hard time staying focused. But there is a lot of us who are focused on this kind of more natural approach to sustainability, and it can be a little overbearing where you get a lot of the hippie culture coming back. So I don't know. I got really into this because I guess the best place to start is I got sick when I was in my early 20s, and I had to kind of. And so that's what led me on this journey, is finding out about food deserts, about people not having access to grocery stores and regular food, and then, realizing that I didn't even eat the regular food that I had access to. I pretty much ate prepackaged food all the time. And just what is all that? What are we being sold? These bright colors, these, fancy logos, and constantly the psychological bombardment when you walk into a corner store or even a grocery store nowadays. all that stuff. It really kind of, I started learning about, the psychology of marketing and everything going on with the larger picture of our economy. So it really it led me into this idea of utilizing the same concept that we see every day in crowdfunding of, new technologies, new ideas, basic innovations, and turning that into kind of an agricultural resource, because the sad fact is not only in millennials, but just in our population in general of over 300 million people in our country alone, only a quarter of us really want to farm. So for me, that's a huge issue. And so I wanted to find a way to bridge that gap between the majority of our population and those who really are passionate about agriculture. And it's like you're talking about fighting for the little man, that's really what this comes down to, is majority of that quarter of our population that even want to be in agriculture, they're not people who are generally striving to be millionaires and billionaires. I mean, some of them may want to lead large farming industry, but that's only like a fraction of that 25%. So these are the real numbers. I mean, this is the reality, and I'm a very big realist in trying to approach the situation. And yeah, the doom and gloom, all the craziness going on in the world. I mean, a lot of millennials know that's happening, and we are really kind of like, wow, thanks, guys, because we realize that it's, if we don't do something about it, we're just tossing it off to the next generation too. So it's definitely something that's really can be daunting, but at the same time, I personally feel passionate about what I'm doing. I know there's tons of other millennials that feel passionate about their projects, whether it's agriculture or not. And I think that utilizing this crowdfunding concept, utilizing this social media concept, getting away from that kind of popularity thing and more about going back to like utilizing your dollar as your vote, and really teaching that to millennials and the next generations, that it's like, you make the decision. If you focus on these content creators and throw them your dollars to give them money for their merchandise and their content, that's what you're saying is important in our world. Mm-hmm. And so that's what we're trying to show, is we want to use content utilizing community events. And at the core of this, our first campaign is indoor community farming. And so our goal is to not so much become a farming monopoly. North American Sustainable Farms is meant to be a sustainable farm organization, a network. So our goal is to really build these indoor community farm centers is really in order to repair economy by restoring old retail spaces, mainly shopping malls, and converting them into more agricultural-based retail spaces, as well as worker spaces. I guess what I'm trying to say is maker spaces is kind of the new term, where people can either create doing crafts or create using technologies, and really start to push that new modern society where we're creating more as humans instead of just reselling all the time. So that's kind of the real centralized part of what we're trying to do. But the larger part of that is, from those indoor community farm centers, we want to spread that agricultural education and rebuild the economies of the area by providing resources and funding to local farmers or educational centers that want to farm, even local companies who want to start farming and raising their own food. My goal is to have sponsorships for those kind of things, because it doesn't have to be a nonprofit for you to sponsor and to raise money from the community. Doing the sponsorship concept, it basically just carries that crowdfunding thing over, where we want to see this as a community. It benefits our local economies and larger overall national economy if small businesses succeed. That's just the reality. So if we take that acknowledgement and use that in agriculture, I don't know how we can't succeed going into the future here. You know what I mean?
Well, Thrice, I got to say, first of all, that was very, very well said. Secondly,
thank you.
I think you mentioned when you were talking about the education part of it, I think it's so easy to educate people when you basically mention certain facts, like 96% of Monsanto shareholders voted to not disclose their GMO ingredients, and as you know, they're now called Bayer, which is a real shame, because that's how most Americans got used to Bayer children's aspirin. So they're really It really is an oxymoron, hypocrisy statement there. We will be back with Dr. Richard Allen Miller and Thrice after the break, folks. Good morning, America. This is Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Pinelli this morning from offgridmontana.com. And I do want to mention, I want to thank Jason, who's engineering the broadcast, who did me a few favors this morning. Did everything on cue like was supposed to be done. So, Jason, I want to personally thank you for what you did this morning. And we have two guests, Dr. Richard Allen Miller, and we also have Thrice. And his website is N as in November, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, .life. Thrice, say Ita, and I hope I'm not butchering that, Thrice, but we're talking about a lot of the things that you're doing in the education, especially back in the, relearning some of those 19th century skills. And before the break, I mentioned about Monsanto, which is now under the name of Bayer, which is a real shame. And, the education that we need to talk about things like amino acids, like proteins, like enzymes. They're a group of proteins that are produced by living cells and act as catalysts for biochemical reactions, which aids in digestion and nutrient support. And I'm sure a lot of people don't realize that when you cook your food beyond 130 degrees Fahrenheit, you kill those enzymes. And when you eat raw, it actually is kind of like a cleansing release of toxins. So the more education I feel that people would get from this lifestyle, we talked privately, Thrice, for a little bit yesterday, and I think I mentioned to you that most people are not aware that the vitamins and minerals come from the soil. You can go to a grocery store and buy the prettiest, most colorful vegetables in the world, and they have no nutrients in them, kind of like an iceberg lettuce type thing. Unless you know where that vegetable is grown, and is it chemical nutrients? I mean, they're growing potatoes in Idaho literally in sand and gravel just through chemical production. So I think if people understood the benefits of immune stimulants versus immune suppressants, like sugar, for example, and certain vegetables that are immune stimulants, like garlic, onions, cayenne pepper, horseradish, ginger, pretty much the whole cabbage family, asparagus. I mean, there's a lot of benefits to the immune stimulation from those particular vegetables.
First of all, what you're talking about is super important, and one of the key things along with that I want to emphasize with just understanding the nutrient makeup of your food is also the correlation of the distance the food has to travel, and that's why we're so focused on establishing local community food centers. So we can basically create that sense of, as a nation, you don't have to go more than a couple hours to actually find almost all the food you need when it comes to local farm food, because there's no reason we can't utilize technology to grow certain things indoors that we can't grow other places, as well as creating a system where northern states grow certain things some years and southern states grow other things, not years, but months. Like there's definitely systematic approaches that we can create more of a local sustainable environment when it comes to the food you eat, which then increases the nutrient density. So that's a huge thing of the whole local food movement concept that I just want to emphasize on what you were talking about with nutrient density in food.
Absolutely. A lot of food, whether it be in vitro, in the laboratory, in the test tube, whatever you want to call it, it's being, people always talk about gluten. Well, there's a lot more proteins than just gluten. And when they change the molecular structure of the plant, even from the seed, so it stays out in the field longer, it stays on the shelf longer, certain grains or breads will puff up and have more of a denser look for weight. A lot of these things aren't benefiting the people. And we will get back to you, and we're going to ask Dr. Richard Allen Miller a few questions, and he certainly deserves the right to answer some since he was the person that turned us on to you. So after the break, folks, we'll be right back. Morning America, Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Tonelli today. And I have two guests. One is Thrice Seita, and his website is N as in November, A as in Apple, S as in Sam, F as in Frank, .Life, L-I-F-E. And he's doing some thinking outside the box, ideas and solutions for the people in this new gig economy. And Thrice, you said some great stuff, and I just want Dr. Richard Allen Miller, Dr. Rick Miller, to comment. Now, obviously, we wouldn't have met you if it wasn't for him, and right on the front of your featured video on the website here is Dr. Rick Miller having an interview with you. And for those of you who haven't seen Dr. Miller, he's the one on the left wearing that hat that kind of looks like a 1960s ashtray.
Thanks.
And I hope that woke up Rick. And Rick, welcome to the show. Thank you for being here, and thank you for letting us meet Thrice.
Well, yeah, you're welcome. How did? Turnover. Good morning, America. Oh, well,
hey, now you got it. Now you got to tell everybody what that hat is. You just,
the hat. It is from Nepal. It is a Nepalese meditation cap that would normally on the top have some form of sacred geometry to help focus the meditation. The Bhutan and moving up into Nepal, I use a climber. Whitaker used to come to dinner with my father in Seattle every Thursday night before he started REI. And so I, by 16, was class 4, rock and ice climbing. And that's what I did. And what's now done is my favorites, Julie Vassipoli, Grace Thorne, others, they have taken the sacred geometry off my hat and started putting military logos of Navy Intel and some of the other things I've done over the years. It's just a logo. It's a branding, a way of, if I'm in a huge conference, a way that you can pick me out in the crowd.
Yeah, okay.
It's a device.
Yeah. No, Rick, let me ask you something. We talk every once in a while because for private reasons and for being on the air when Vince wants me to be a guest host on days he can't make it for whatever reason. And we've had a few shows together, and I just want you to tell the people what, because obviously you're doing some work with Thrice, and you're on one of his videos on the featured video here. Tell the American people what turned you on regarding his skill sets, his goals, his ideas and solutions that could benefit the American people.
Thrice is one of many individual regions that are attempting sustainable lifeboats, and right now I'm participating in sharpening that part of his system up with old-time information. Millennials are extremely intelligent, and they're not very practical, and they seek that balance between the two without the interface of certain forms of technology that may or not be here in a moment. In less than 3 days ago, most of the West Coast went down for 2 hours on the grid. And it happened. I'm sitting there at 8:30 in the morning, and all of a sudden I go, boop, and I have no power. Now, my girlfriend is in another part of town, no cell phone. What do you do now? What is your game plan when, with no warning, your children are in school, buses are not going to run because of an EMP strike, probably wiping out the ignition system? What are you going to do? What's your game plan? Nobody has given that a thought. And so I have begun with Matt Stein a network of sustainable agriculture and lifeboats in almost every state, and now I'm moving into Canada this year. And I have Mennonite and Doukhobor and other religious communities up there that have been working with me for 30 years through Conrad Richters of Canada, but none of them are organized. and they don't know about each other. For example, the one I'd like you to do next week would be Xavier Hawk. He's in Florida right now, and he has a flying Chautauqua. That means a hot air balloon that goes from one community to the other, dropping down and bringing in entertainment. He's in 4 states with 8 closed down, closed system permaculture groups in 4 states. Several of them have monolithic domes. I stayed in one in Cloudland when I set up Chattanooga. Chattanooga was a project, took me 3 weeks. I went into the city, and the city fathers handed me the key to the city. I went to all the different bookstores, libraries, radio stations, TV. And then I did 3 workshops. And the first one was to take a 200-year-old family farm in the center of Chattanooga and turn it into a community garden run by children. And right now, as a result of that 3 weeks with Michael Moore, we filmed it, we did it all. There'll be a movie someday. What happened next is Chattanooga's new logo is right here, right now. And that city currently produces 40% of the food that is consumed by the inhabitants there. Now, just-in-time delivery that Thrice and others have suggested are important is antiquated. It has longshoremen, it has Teamsters, it has the ocean, and it has the mafia. It has all of it. And with that said, large cities like New York are going to be a nightmare in the 4th day when there's no food, there's no water, and there's no toilet. Now, nobody has given that a thought except with a gentle reminder that we had a couple days ago with the grid going boop down most of the West Coast for a brief moment in time. And what I've tried to do is I don't want to be a leader. What I'm trying to do is leave some footprints for the young Turks, like Xavier Hawk and Thrice, to begin their own journey, as I have done for 45 years with the military. And I'm just putting in bunkers and communities. When I grew up in Seattle, I was part of Growing Family. We started the Rainbow Gathering. We started the Pike Street Market. We started the Bulk Commodities Exchange. We started Puget Consumer Co-op. We did a bunch of things. There's 2 houses up on Queen Anne Hill with Forrest Roth-Schomer was my roommate in my room. We had 2 to a room. Forrest started Abundant Life Seed Foundation. We have something happened back then that changed me. And that's why the military, even today, is still using me, because I have a vision of a broader picture. I bring to the table more vision with more degrees than anybody, last man standing kind of thing. And what I'm trying to do now is do a series of classes online for millenniums that want to know how to do free-range chicken. Let me give you a little story I did in Carlisle with the Amish. The Amish hired me. They took one of their high-end bishops and excommunicated him so he could do outreach at Acres USA. And he brought me back in, and I did 2 business plans with the Amish out of Carlisle. And the first was to create a low-cholesterol egg by taking their free-range chicken and playing Mozart and feeding them purslane, which is omega-3 acids, to create a lower cholesterol egg, which is still now the primary set of what the Amish are advertising for their eggs, all along the eastern seaboard. And I'm trying to leave footprints like that so that you, younger and younger than you, take these footprints and incorporate them into your own vision. Yours in Montana is quite different than the one in Arapahoe, Arizona, where I have a missile silo with a garden on top. And the one I want you to visit next is up in Sandpoint, Idaho, which is a Quaker retreat called Peaceable Kingdom on the Pack River. And Joe Wythe, who's 95 years old, was the protege Frank Lloyd Wright, and he's 95 now, and he designed Unicorn Bunker, which is where it's a bunker that he designed internally, and how you do your drawers and all the rest of it architecturally, and then his roof is his garden with dirt on it. And I believe that each habitat is different, and that's what we're going to be discussing with Thrice. Now, there's sidebars, like the young millenniums are taking drugs like we did in the 60s, but instead of taking ayahuasca, we were taking LSD. These are shortcuts to Grandma's house. And as I was trying to suggest to the millenniums, like all shortcuts, they're big bad wolves. And so you need to be aware of the landscape. And that's the same thing with habitat. That's what I'm about now with Thrice. He's just one more in the network that we are trying to put together as the postman. By the way, that's going to be one of my new email names. I will be the postman. And what I do is I bring the news from one to another. That's what Xavier Hawk is doing with his Flying Chautauqua on the East Coast. And so each region is different. We have, with these changes earth changes that are about to happen, we have an opportunity.
I agree. Well, we're in the gig economy, and if you're going to be doing classes, Rick, you got to get a new hat, first of all. I'm just saying. But, there's so much, just like...
I can get one like Cal Worthington. You all come down now, yeah? Yeah.
Just like some of the facts that I was talking about regarding vitamins and minerals in the soil and what Monsanto's done to the American people and enzymes, amino acids, proteins.
By the way,
so much information.
That enzyme thing you want, this is very important information. So I discovered something about enzymes.
Buddy. We have a break. I will let you speak after the break. America, we will be right back. Good morning, America. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli this morning. So, Thrice, you'll be happy to know.
Time, and then I'll get out of your way. That it's just a little cassette. So I discovered that all your primary neurotransmitters, that's precursors, break down and are gone in less than 6 microseconds. That's 10 to the minus 6 seconds at 97 degrees Fahrenheit. You get even close to 97 degrees for history. And with that, you lose all your access to your essential amino acids and or taking something across the blood-brain barrier. And I was doing studies on the blue-green algae, spirulina, chlorella, and Aphananophis plus aqua, which grows out of Klamath Lake. And the spirulina and chlorella did not have neurotransmitters because they were primarily being grown in growth ponds under supervision, so they're sterile and clean, whereas Klamath Lake was an open system being exposed to microshrimp and daphnia, which means that it's not a true vegan food. But that's where the neurotransmitters came across. And why that was important to freeze dry rather than drum dry your product or field dry it like the sun is that it retained the neural and polypeptides that were extremely important in that blue-green algae that distinguished it from the other two. Why? Because it then took trace minerals across the blood-brain barrier that were necessary to make true nerve tissue over glial cell. And that was a study I did with Robert O. Becker at the University of Washington when with severed perineal, and I was able to, in laboratory with people watching, regenerate a severed nerve trunk on my left knee. I had drop foot. And it took me 4.5 months because the glial cells and or sheath material or primary nerve tissue has the viscosity of tocopherols. It's like vitamin E. It's very viscous, and it took 4.5 months by gravity to fall down to the knee part to regenerate and regrow nerve tissue. What does that also suggest?
Hey, Rick, I'm going to put you on hold for just a little while because you and I will be together in the second hour. I just want to say goodbye. We're running out of time.
Oh, yes, no, I didn't know.
I want to say goodbye to Thrice. And Thrice, just so you know, I was pollinating eggplant and peppers in my solarium with a little paintbrush just now because it's indoors, connected to my cabin. It doesn't get the benefit of the bees or any insects. So I just pollinate a lot of things at certain times of year with a paintbrush, especially my early tomatoes before the bees find the greenhouse even outside. Now, that being said, we talked yesterday, I mentioned about robotics, automation, artificial intelligence going to be taking millions and tens of millions of jobs. Very few people are going to have the education and the money to have the education to code and do things of that nature. So thinking outside the box and having this new gig economy, which you're approaching at a common sense, logical standpoint, like producing food, I think has a lot of merit. So before we hear the music, which could be any second now, please tell the American people, anybody who wants to get involved, should they go to your website? Do you want to give out a phone number? What do you want to do? Thrice?
Again, we're focused on crowd. We're focused on crowdfunding farming, so we have pretty much streamlined it. Basically, you can just go to our website, like you said, NASF.Life. You can find the campaign page, and you can see the ICFC page right now, and that's the Indoor Community Farm Center page. And you can click there. There's a contribution link button, and you can just contribute right there if you want to, contribute and sponsor this farm campaign. But we also have a merchandise store called saltoferarth.life. And on there, on the first page, we feature our farm campaign as well as we have farm merchandise products, shirts that say things like Farmer Tough, Family, Farmer in different ways across the shirt, really kind of trendy, eye-catching shirts. And that's a way you can really support what we're doing. But besides that, just go to the website, contact us via email, contact us via phone, however you can reach out to us.
Good morning, America. Rich Scheben sitting in for Vincent Finelli today. Hour 2 with Dr. Rick Miller. Now, Rick, that was a very insightful conversation that we had with Thrice. He was very impressive, very eloquent in speech, knew what he was doing, had his goals set up. I can see why you were very interested in his cause. And, folks, for those of you who live in urban, suburban America, which are 90% of the people, and it's probably close to that who don't grow their own food, and the homeostasis in the body needs good nutrition, needs the proper bioavailability, the metabolism, the excretion, the absorption of nutrition through vegetables that are not grown in pastures that have been chemically and mechanically neutered, meaning the soil. So it's so important to think about self-sufficiency and nutrition and health all in the same paragraph. Rick?
Well, I don't know where you want me to go with that. What I was trying to...
Well, the reason why I did is because I know you wanted... I had to interrupt you because I had to say... I had to be considered...
Thrice, yeah, I gotcha. And Thrice is typical of individuals I'm now meeting in this network I'm putting together across North America. He's typical. And I'm meeting some incredible people like you and Thrice, others. And each one of you forms a voice across America with options and opportunity. I have a reporter here listening with me right now taking notes, and he's going to write for a couple of newspapers, and he's taking notes, and his observation, well, we got to go out and warn people. And I said, no, it isn't about a glass half empty. It's about an opportunity and a glass half full. This is not a bad thing to happen. It's actually inevitable. It can't not happen. And as a result, if it wasn't God doing it and the earth doing it and timing doing it, you would be doing it because I've had, like you, enough. and it's time for a change. How do we do this in a manner that there's less blood, where it's more comfortable? We laugh rather than cry. That's the Greek, divine comedy and divine tragedy. There's your option.